Oh, that golden hour. Those warm, rich, delicious colors of a low country sunset. Can't you just hear the birds now? Let's do this today. Let's go ahead and paint this painting.
Hey everybody, I'm Suzanne. In today's video, I'm going to take you step by step with the process of painting a low country sunset. Now here's the completed piece. And you can tell I used a very limited palette. Lots of warm yellows and all kinds of yummy colors that just kind of light up the piece. And this was really fun. It's more of an exercise for me just to get used to playing with light. And as you can see, a lot of the light is concentrated right in the center of the piece, or off, it's really off center with the sun and the glow and all that fun stuff. And I'm going to show you how I did that. So if you're here and you've been coming back to my videos to watch, thank you so much for being here. Thanks to all my subscribers. If you're not a subscriber, why not? Go ahead and subscribe and give me a thumbs up for this video. And we'll not waste any more of your time and jump into this little piece of the low country sunset.
Here is the color palette we'll be using for this low country sunset. And I'm kind of staying within one basic family of color, as you can see. There's very limited amount of variance in color. So this is Yellow Lake. This is Yellow Lake Deep by Michael Harding. This is, that is Italian Brown Umber. That's also Michael Harding. Burnt Sienna, Michael Harding. This is the Sennelier color, it's an opaque, it's Van Dyke. It's Van Dyke by Sennelier. It's an opaque color. This is, oh boy. I'll come back to you here on that one. I think that I'll have to find out. I think that's also a Sennelier color. Ivory black and titanium white. Now, I'm going to go in with a wash of color and then kind of discern where I'm going to be putting my shapes, and then we'll just go from there. Let's see where it heads. Let's go. Have fun. I'm using Yellow Lake and a lot of Gamsol just to give this substrate an overall yellow warm glow. I happen to be painting on a 9x12 super slick substrate made by Da Vinci is the company, and I'm lucky enough to get most of my materials are coming from Jerry's Artorama at Knoxville, Tennessee. That is, and I'll leave the link to their website. They are artsupplies.com. And Scott brings me all my materials. He's awesome. He is awesome and loves to give me things to try. So anyhow, we're just going ahead and sketching on a little bit of what I imagine this composition is going to be. Now that bright orange color is Yellow Lake Deep. And it is a semi-transparent or transparent color, but it's Michael Harding, so it's very super pigment rich, even for a transparent color, and it does so very well. As far as the colors that I was confused on in the palette, the one color that I didn't tell you I was using was actually Michael Harding's Red Umber. That was the color I wasn't sure of. And Mars Violet. Mars Violet by Blue Ridge, it's an opaque red brown color, and it's awesome, and I did mention the Van Dyke Brown by Sennelier, also an opaque color, but the majority of the colors other than those two were transparent colors. So I'm kind of suggesting now where the sun's going to be and where my light's going to be, and since the point where the light is, as it goes off from left to right from that white line that I kind of just made a little squiggle there, it will have from that tree line in the back, there'll be almost like an ombre effect where you'll have a gradation of the light on the trees. And that's what made this fun. So to get that kind of gray yellow, I actually mixed, obviously, titanium white, ivory black, and the yellow lake. And it just kind of gave it that gray cast. And the upper part, I used the burnt sienna on top of what was already there. And I'll use my 279 series brush there, by Rosemary, and it's great for softening the lines. Of course, I am using a substrate that is super slick, and I don't want to leave lines if I can help it. The other brush that I'm using here is one of their flats, Rosemary Flat, and it is, I believe, also a 279 series. So it's a natural hair brush, a little softer. And I do prefer using softer brushes when I am painting on these super slick substrates. Again, these panels are by Da Vinci, and you can order those from your Jerry's Artorama, and but they're good. I like using them. So I keep doing this application over and over again because I'm trying to get the lines out. And since I almost have to give it a little bit of dry time just to kind of give it some tooth, a little bit of paint just to get it started, and then I can go back and soften it. But I'm just very, just trying to blend very carefully. I know the way I work, I generally work from the background to the foreground. So I want my background or my sky to be just so. So that's what I'm working here. Now, I am using a little, it's a tiny little horsehair or goat hair brush. It's actually a Chinese calligraphy brush that a friend gave me, a whole bunch of these amazing brushes, which are great for blending and smoothing out. And that's what this brush happens to be. Now, you don't have to have this brush. You can use any soft brush. Goat hair brushes are awesome for this process. If you have even synthetic sables will do the trick. I just happen to have this brush available and I'm just using it. But you can see it does a nice job on just smoothing everything out here. And of course, I keep emphasizing I've got that sun, and the sun is the brightest, hottest part of this whole painting. And I am using titanium white in the center to create that sun. Now here I'm using a combination of just a tad of ivory black and Van Dyke brown. And of course the Van Dyke brown is opaque. So it's going to give me that coverage that I need. So folks, I can't overemphasize the concept of understanding the opacity of your paint, because knowing how it's going to behave, how it's going to cover, how it's going to punch up or cover or mask any color that you put over top is important. Because if I had some other amazing transparent color here, I could have just killed it right here using these opaque colors. So you can see I just stopped it right there at that line, because I know it's going to be a little bit transparent. And since I am painting into a wet edge, the edges, or the treetops, if you will, are going to kind of blend into that wet edge and give it that little bit of softness. Now here I'm going in directly, I believe, with a combination of the that's burnt sienna and yellow lake deep, and I'm creating that ombre. See, so you're going to see how that little bit of that orangier color is going to pull into the darker redder color on the immediate right. So it just kind of pops it in there. But you can see I'm using a light hand. This brush I happen to be using here is a number 4 Princeton Velvet Touch brush. This also was a gift for me to give it a try from Scott at Jerry's Artorama. He gives me free stuff all the time. He's so amazing. I love him. And so the folks at yourartsupplies.com, Jerry's Artorama in Knoxville. Folks, I'll leave their link in the description. They'll ship it right to you too. They will ship wherever. So you can see that I created the treetops, but you have that kind of soft blend there in the middle, and you'll see I'll keep moving back and forth with that. And I have to do that on the other side, or on the left side of that intense sunlight. So and so I'm going in with a little bit of a yellower. Now I am using just the yellow lake with a little bit of ivory black to create this other yellow here. I think there's a little titanium white in that too. So it's a grayer color. But as I get closer to the immediate sunlight, right under the sun, you'll see I'll end up using straight yellow lake with a little bit of titanium white. It'll happen, trust me. So you can see I just made a mirror image on the other side of the sunlight with the same colors that you saw me using earlier. So I just have to, you're getting the gist here. So the light is coming from that sun, and it's throwing down that light onto the surfaces below, and that is why it's going to be warmer underneath the sun. So I'm just and I'm still using that wonderful little brush. And I'll tell you what's nice about these velvet soft touches. The Velvet Touch brushes by Princeton, they keep their point. And if you know me, I'll wear a brush out. And this is a synthetic sable, and it keeps its point. So a lot of times it's what I use when I have to keep that edge. When I need that point, this brush has never failed me. So I'm making just a little bit of the reflective aspects that you would see on the light with those trees. You're going to get that foliage is kind of coming down in front of the water, and that's what we're painting in here. And this brush is doing the trick, just doing it right. So now I'm just painting in mass. I know I'm going to have this tree over here, and there's lots of foliage and lots of bushes and all this good stuff, but I'm just painting in mass. And so I'm scooting around trying to figure out where things are going. I kind of ad lib a lot. So you can see that I have the Yellow Lake Deep behind, kind of in the center of that circle. There is method to my madness here. So I know that I'm going to have that foliage is going to have areas where you're going to see that peeking through. So I'm putting even more of the Yellow Lake Deep, and it's a fun color. Michael Harding just, he does a bang up job with his colors, and it's these are some of my favorite. And the Yellow Lake Deep is very similar to Indian Yellow, as you can see. So I'm kind of suggesting where the foreground is going to go. And I know I've got this big tree that I've got to put in here and figure out where all that's going. So it may look like a mess, a big hot mess, but trust me, I'll take you there. You're going to see that it's going to come together. So I'm going in a little bit, less opaque. More opaque, really putting in more coverage of these colors. Again, it's primarily the Yellow Lake Deep that I'm using here. Now to get that tree in, and I am still working alla prima here, so I do have a wet background. You can see I'm struggling with the blend. I'm using a nice little flat here. I'm just kind of popping in this color, so I know I needed something a little bit more opaque and a little bit more punch to it. So I am using a combination of Mars Red and Ivory Black, and Mars Red is an opaque color, so it's going to cover well for me. And then I'm just using just getting that combination. And I think at this point, I don't think I did yet. I know at some point I do add Cad Red to my palette because my favorite dark, rich black color is Cad Red and Ivory Black. And I'm thinking I might have done that for the trunk, but it doesn't look like I did. I may just be using the Van Dyke, which is opaque, or the Mars Red to create this richness in the tree. It's kind of hard to appreciate here, but it isn't just a solid black tree. There is color in there. But I am working into a wet surface, so it's kind of a struggle because I want it to stand out. I want to get as much of my painting done, and I could have used my paint scraper to take some of this paint off so that it would be less of a blend issue for me, but I was just kind of going with it. and getting my branches in and just kind of working it here. I am using a smaller pointed round. I believe that's one of the pointed rounds. I think it's a squirrel hair brush, if I'm not mistaken, by Rosemary and Company, and it's one of their, nope, I've got a bigger one in my hand, so it's not. It is a, what brush am I using there? I believe it might be a, if I just turn it over, turn it over, Sue. Let's see what that is. I am doing everything to show you what brush it is. It is a long, I think it's a long filbert. Looks like it's probably a 279 series, which is a natural hair brush. Again, I tend to use softer hair brushes when I'm working on this surface, so I'm pretty sure that's what it is. It looks like a pointed round, but I believe it is just a long, smaller filbert that I'm using here. But again, using my opaque color, you can see that's probably Mars Violet and Ivory Black. If it's not Mars Violet, if you don't have Mars Violet, it almost doesn't matter. You could have used, if I was going to give you an alternative to this color that you see here, you could use the Van Dyke Brown, which this could be, with Ivory Black. Or again, if you don't have Van Dyke Brown, Cad Red. You just want it to be a red type of black or a dark color. And opacity matters here, folks. The opacity will get you where you want to go here. I'm obviously warming it up, and you see that rich reddy color, and that is, I believe, Van Dyke Brown directly on top. Van Dyke Brown, at least the Sennalier's Van Dyke Brown, does have a lot more reds in it. It's Van Dyke, it's Van Dyke Brown, but it is Sennalier's. Not all Van Dyke Browns are going to be quite this red. It's funny, right? You would think that everything would be the same, but tis not. So I'm using, and it looks like I'm just kind of willy-nillying my brush all over here, and in some ways I kind of am, but it's a directed willy-nilly. I'm trying to make the little tiny the tiny leaves and the looks that I'm trying to get here, and I'm using a very light hand, and by that I mean I'm putting very little pressure on the brush. I'm loading my brush more often and letting the brush itself make the small detail. Otherwise, if I push harder on this brush to get more of the paint out, I'm going to start making really large little spots. And I don't necessarily want that because I want it to look like leaves against the backdrop. So, putting less pressure on your brush is going to be able to get you what you're looking for here, folks. And it's really important that you do it that way. Practice. You can always practice on a board or something else about how much pressure you're putting on brushes. It will help you in the long run to practice that kind of brush technique. And as I move through this tree, you can see that there's that neat Spanish ivy hanging off the branches. And I am using a combination, especially the closer I get to the sun, the more yellow or transparent they become. So I'm using Yellow Lake as the base for a lot of my ivy, or yeah, the ivy hanging out of the tree. So kind of pop that in there. Now I'm wanting to kind of establish the foreground a little bit, and the green that I used here, and it wasn't on my original palette choice, was gold green. And I believe that color was a Richardson color that I had. Now I'm also using straight raw umber, and raw umber. And that color is a very, very neutral color. It's I like that color. It is a transparent color, but it does work really well here. And so a combination of the green gold and raw umber make for the perfect low light grass here in this painting. So, and I'm being super cash here with this brush. You can see I'm lifting up, and just by lightening the touch on the end of the brush gives you that sort of like light grassy feathery look. Again, it helps to have a nice soft brush, and this is a 279 series flat, and it's doing the trick here, folks. Taking advantage of the nice wet paint on this slick substrate, I'm able to use my paint scraper just to go ahead and sign my piece. Yes, the painting is not complete yet, but when I have an opportunity like this, I grab it. So it gives me the opportunity to do a good signature with very little effort. And I can clean up the edge there with a brush, boom, like it never happened. Using a small, I think it's a little tiny pointed round, or it could be one of the very small, what is that brush right there? I believe it is a pointed round brush. I'm doing the, just the opaque plant life that wouldn't actually be able to see through, but I am warming it up, and I am using a little bit of the Mars Violet, or if you don't have Mars Violet, the cadmium ivory black mixture, because I want this to still have a warmth to it. I didn't want it to just be black. And I think you can tell by looking at the tree that there's a warmth to the tree as well. It's not just a solid black. And I'm just putting in a lot of the foliage that would be, would be silhouetted against that bright light. Again, more of the Spanish moss is going in. Sorry, that's Singer barking at people as they walk by. But yeah, I've got, ooh, and I went a little crazy here. I did get some cadmium red, obviously, but there is a little bit of method to my madness here. I know that looks a little unusual at first, but I will be putting a dark color on top because I know with that sun being right there, that will be some of the hottest light coming through. And so I wanted the Spanish moss to kind of have that warmth to it. And I'll be putting in some other color on top, no worries. But yeah, I'm actually using a little cad red, and that is obviously cad red. There is no other color that can be. And I'm using a little bit of the yellow lake added to it and trying to do the little detail of the Spanish moss hanging down and lighting it up a little bit and using the small brush and a light hand to create the little fine details here. as I move around the painting, and you can see here I'm adding more of the cad red ivory black mixture here. And again, with all the Spanish moss hanging down, I am creating the brighter color first, and then I'll put the dark color on top of it, because that's how it would be silhouetted against the light. And again, just kind of moving around. It's a lot of the same stuff happening at this point, and I won't bore you with my talking about it, but I am using a combination of cadmium red with ivory black, and in this case it's cadmium red light. And but I need the opacity to cover on this painting, because there's so much of this that is still very wet. And if I didn't use an opaque paint, it doesn't mean it's still not going to blend with the lighter colors underneath it, but it stands a better chance of holding up to it. So you can see here I'm putting the next color down, whereas I initially had put down the Yellow Lake Deep, and then now you can see I'm putting a little bit of the right here, I'm putting the combination of the cad red and ivory black, and then I'll be able to put some more of the black on top of it. You'll see, it'll make sense here in a minute. But I'm just doing the foliage of this little bush that's sticking out, and of course, since it's sticking out closer to where that sunlight is, it's warmer and lighter on the ends. This was a fun project. This was a really fun exercise in understanding light and color. And, you know, if you guys tried to do this at home, let me know how it turns out for you, what you learn from the process. For me, it's just keeping in mind, where's my light source, which you should do with all your paintings, really. But this makes it more obvious. Where is my light source? It's dead center, and it's this bright, bright orb in the sky, and it's throwing down all this beautiful, warm light. And knowing where to cool things down, where things are going to be in the shadows, etc., is really critical, and that's what makes this a successful piece, I think. So you can see that I'm adding the darker color on top. This would be the opaque areas that the light's just not coming through. And here I'm going a little nuts with cad red, folks. I'm having a ball. I just like how this is lighting it up. And you're going to see that even after I frame the piece, I have a second thought and saying I want even more. But I like, I'm going off script here, because obviously my photo reference that I'm using doesn't have nearly as much of this dark, this bright red in here, but it just does it for me. And I'm loving it. I'm digging it. So initially I'm just kind of, putting the cad down, the cad red, and then I'm putting ivory black over top of it. And, I'm still putting in a lot of foliage here, but I like how the red looks. And I just, you'll see, I go a little nuts. just running around, going through the piece, adding more foliage, adding more moss, making the sun a little bit bigger. I wanted the sun to be just a little bit bigger in here, so I added more titanium white, and I am adding just the little sparkle that's on top of the water. This is where the fun. I just think this is magic. This sparkle and all that fun stuff is the magic of a painting. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed today's video. And if you did, give me a thumbs up and let me know if you have any questions. Leave in the comment section, and I'll get to you. Enjoy. And I think we are done. So this was actually quite simple. This was a very, very limited palette. And I wanted to focus the light right here. So you can see that even the area where the sun's, this is obviously is the sun. We've got a lot of light hitting this, and it kind of radiates out. So you can see it's light here, and then it gets a little, darker, then a redder. You know, there's a gradient in color, and I wanted to capture that. And the same here in the grass. So there's some sunlight is hitting this area, and there's a little bit more warmth in this area here, and then it just kind of does the same thing. It fades out. In capturing the foliage and the moss here, I kind of, I stayed a little bit warmer in this area too, because the sun would catch that as well. This was fun. This is as much as an exercise for me and playing with light, trying new things. And this is a low country sunset. This is just something that appealed to me, folks, and I just wanted to try it. So I hope you enjoyed today's video, and give me a thumbs up if you haven't already. Give me a follow, a subscribe, all that good stuff, and I appreciate it. And I'll see you on the
here's
other
something
side.
worth mentioning. So I started popping this sucker into a frame, and it's still wet. I just finished it. And I started looking, and I really wanted to add a little bit more pop. I liked how it looked in the frame, but with that intense sun, I decided to add a little bit more. You can see a little bit more of the cadmium mixture, just brightening it up in just areas. I'm just popping little bits because it makes it more interesting to me. And that's, you know what, is a piece ever truly finished? I don't know. But sometimes I will go back and just kind of, pop a little bit more color in. I just like the cad red, and I see an opportunity to create that little bit more detail in some of the branch ends. And obviously this is wet, but you can see where there's so much more red on the outside where the light would be hitting the tree. It just made it more interesting, and I just thought I'd
Did anybody actually paint along? I know this was mainly a time-lapsed video, but it really wasn't a complicated composition, nor was it a complicated palette. So that made it easy to just play with the light, and that's what I did here. And if you can tell, I was able to kind of focus my warmth right here in the center. And if you're looking at the piece, you can see that if it goes from the middle where the light is the strongest out, you can see that the light follows like through this back tree line here, and a little bit more light is captured here on the trunk of the tree, which, as you saw, I actually went back after I framed the piece because the warmth of the frame, everything, this all seemed to jive. It had a good vibe, but I just wanted a little bit more punch of color. And yes, I had a reference that I worked from to do this piece, and no, the reference did not have this cadmium red on the trunk, but you know what? It just seemed to beg for it. It just was dying to have a little bit more punch of color and enhance the glow that the sunset offered this particular scene, right? So super, super fun piece to do. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and as always, if you have any questions whatsoever about anything I covered in the video, please leave it in the comment section and I'll get to you. And it could be any comment or question at all. A lot of folks will ask me, well, what brush were you using? And I try to leave most of my brushes also in the description of this video and all that good stuff. So yeah, leave me a comment. Tell me what you think. Tell me, oh my gosh, that was the worst painting I ever saw you paint. Go ahead, tell me about it. Or maybe you want to see something on my next painting. You know, maybe you have a suggestion of something you'd like to see. You can leave that in the comment section too, because I will see it and I will respond. So from Kingsport, Tennessee, I want to say thank you so much for joining me, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.